Hey guys, Matt Laidlaw here. So I wanted to weigh in on a topic that has been pretty hot lately, and that is Harley-Davidson and their declining sales. And it seems like everybody wants to weigh in with their speculation as to what's going on with the motorcycle industry, what Harley-Davidson isn't doing, are millennials not buying bikes, what's wrong with this next generation of riders, Harley-Davidson's core clientele, that is the baby boomers, are dying. And there's just a whole lot of speculation going on by so-called financial experts as to kind of the current state of the market, the Harley-Davidson market. So I just wanted to kind of come in and give my 2 cents worth and kind of give you a perspective from someone who's selling bikes on the front line every day. So every year I make it a point to go on a ride with a group of friends up to Julian, California. It's an awesome scenic ride. This was taken in November, and I haven't done anything with this footage yet, so the footage you'll be seeing in this video is in November of 2017, us going up to Julian, California. So I wanted to make a video of the top 3 challenges that I see facing Harley-Davidson right now and the motorcycle industry as a whole. One of the main challenges that a lot of people want to talk about is the fact that the baby boomers were a large market that bought motorcycles in abundance, and that market segment is now getting too old and aging out to be buying motorcycles anymore. And the new generations, the millennials in particular, don't have the desire to be buying motorcycles, specifically Harley-Davidsons, as much as the baby boomer generation. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think it goes a lot deeper than that. But here's my top 3 challenges that I see facing Harley-Davidson and the motorcycle industry as a whole. So the first challenge that I see are the greater barriers to entry in this day and age. So I want to paint a quick picture of my family and the way I grew up and rode motorcycles. So I was born in 1980, so some might argue that I'm a really young Gen Xer or I'm a really old millennial. It depends on who you ask. I've done a lot of internet research and I can't really figure out what generation I'm in, but it's either one of those two. Now my dad is a baby boomer, and growing up my dad had no problem pulling out his dirt bike after school, riding it straight out of his garage and just riding it off into the streets and into the nearby dirt areas that were unmarked, not being used. And so it was a lot easier for him just to come home from school and ride a motorcycle every single day without any type of restrictions and without low cost barriers. He grew up in Arcadia, California. Nowadays, if you want to ride in any type of an area that's heavily populated or a heavy metro area, there's a million different things that you have to have in place before you can even begin to get out and ride a motorcycle. First of all, you have to be of the proper age. You have to have the proper licensing, so you have to have taken classes or passed tests at the DMV, and you have to have gotten your M1 endorsement in California or an equivalent in other states that allows you to be endorsed to ride a motorcycle. You have to have the proper insurance, namely liability insurance. That costs money. You have to have the bike registered as well. That's additional money. The bike has to be street legal, so you can't just take any old bike out of there. It's got to have the proper plating, turn signals, horn, and other things to make the bike legal on the California highways. And most people don't want to go out there unless they have some type of training under their belt, because once again, once you're out on the road, you want to be able to be safe out there with other cars passing and everything else. So the costs to just get out and even begin to riding a motorcycle on the streets are a lot higher than they were back 40, 50 years ago. So I've said this before, and I'll mention it again. My personal opinion, if you're looking to ride a motorcycle and you're looking to get into it, riding out on the dirt, off-roading is probably the best way to go. Now, not everybody has access to off-road areas and dirt bikes, and so they really have to really make a leap of faith to invest a lot of their money and resources into learning how to ride a motorcycle with the hope that they're going to like it and they're able to do it and feel comfortable and confident doing it. And so it really is a leap of faith to get out there and do it. Now there's plenty of classes out there, and Harley-Davidson does a good job at offering riding academy courses and really promoting learning how to ride motorcycles. But really it has to come from within if you're wanting to get out there and ride. And a lot of it is the way you're brought up. If your parents didn't ride, you don't have friends that don't ride, well, the likelihood of you learning how to ride and having that desire to ride is probably very, very low, which actually will take me into our next subject here. So the number 2 biggest challenge that I see the motorcycle facing right now is the general population just has a lower tolerance to risk. I think anyone who has ever bought a motorcycle or ridden a motorcycle has had a parent or spouse or any type of a loved one that has encouraged them not to buy the bike or was completely against you getting a motorcycle because of the perceived risks of riding a motorcycle. I know it's something that I face almost every single day. People wanting to buy a bike, but they've got to get permission from whatever loved one they have in their life who doesn't want them on a bike because of what might happen to them. And I just feel like as time goes on, there's more and more laws that we're faced with every day that are safety laws. And believe me, I'm all about safety. We've seen helmet laws pop up, we've seen seatbelt laws pop up, and these are good laws for the overall safety of people. But at the same time, I believe that we live in a free country, and if you don't want to wear something, then you shouldn't have to. And I just feel like the safety and the amount of safety and precaution that we have nowadays is just completely stifling. And I'm a safe rider, and I believe in practicing safe things and defensive driving, but I just feel like we'd all stay at home and sit in front of a screen all day if we wanted to be 100% absolutely safe. There's just no such thing as not taking risks in life. You're not going to do anything fun. You're not going to experience anything in life if you always play everything 100% safe. And so I think riding motorcycles is a calculated risk that if it's done in the right way, then it can be extremely rewarding. Rides like the one I'm doing today are very, very gratifying. It's a very therapeutic thing. It's definitely a release from the world, and I just feel like there's less of that nowadays. And so, but I just feel like there's just a lower and lower tolerance in the world for this type of activity, and there's just more awareness around the dangers of everything. If you get in a car, you could die as well, but for whatever reason, people don't really see that as a risk that would make it so you don't get in a car anymore. The third biggest challenge that I see facing the motorcycle industry right now, and this is kind of a broad one, but I classify it as shifting financial priorities. And let me start off by saying that back when the baby boomers were growing up, transportation was everything. Transportation is what you needed to have a job. Transportation was an identity. The type of car you drove wasn't only a hobby, but it was your identity. And buying and having and owning a car really brought you up to a new level as far as the class you were in. And it was almost like a mandatory thing to really thrive in the economy. Nowadays, I feel like transportation is kind of an afterthought. I'm seeing among younger family members and younger friends that are growing up right now that are coming of age, 16 years old, to get a license, and they don't even have any desire to even get a license. I see young kids waiting till they're 18, 19, and 20 years old before they even think about getting a driver's license. Well, that's because we live in the age of the internet now. So many things can be done on the internet. You can work from home. You can buy things on the internet. You can socialize on the internet. Everything is done on the internet. Whereas, buying things, having a job, and socializing, they were all very heavily dependent on you having transportation. So that's no longer the case. And I'm talking about cars here. Usually motorcycles are secondary to car, where a lot of people's thought is, after I have a car, if I still have money left over, then I'll do something fun for myself and get a motorcycle. So, if people aren't even buying cars as much or have the desire to even have a car as much, then really where does that leave motorcycles? There's executives at billion-dollar companies like Uber that are really banking on people having the thought and kind of the paradigm shift that vehicles are really no longer a necessity to even own. So if the financial priority is being shifted away from vehicles, cars, motorcycles, then what is that financial responsibility being shifted to? And that is computers and smartphones. In this day and age, if you don't have a smartphone, you can't operate in society. And everybody's got to have the latest and greatest iPhone or Android device or whatever. And computers as well. You have to have a computer. If you're in school, college, whatever, operating, trying to find a job, operating in the marketplace, you got to have a computer. You got to stay connected. Even me right now, if I had to choose between a vehicle and a computer and my smartphone, I would take my computer and my smartphone. You just cannot operate without them. So that's kind of become a mandatory device to live in the world today. And so people coming out of college, young professionals that are on a shoestring budget, that's where their money is going to get spent. And unless you live in somewhat of an excess, there's probably not a whole lot left for a motorcycle. Either that or you got to have a lifestyle where you can't live without a motorcycle. So I really try never to point out problems unless I can offer a solution. And first off, right now, a lot of the industry professionals and executives are trying to figure out solutions to increase sales. And again, I'm talking about Harley-Davidson because I'm a Harley guy, but really this can be said for the entire motorcycle industry right now. But specifically Harley, I know that people are saying, well, we need to make bikes that appeal to the younger generation right now, appeal to the younger crowd. We need to have programs and vehicles that cater to people that are beyond the scope of what Harley-Davidson typically sells to, and that is, the middle-aged male. And so, they're saying, hey, we need to reach out to other demographics, we need to reach out to women, and we need to reach out to the younger guys. And I think all of that's really good, and that's all really what needs to happen. Harley-Davidson has been talking about creating millions of new riders over the next 10 years, and really pushing game plans to create new riders, and ultimately that is what needs to happen. But I think Harley-Davidson gets criticized a lot for just one day waking up and realizing that all their clientele are not buying bikes anymore, and then all of a sudden it's this knee-jerk reaction to, well, what are we going to do to make more riders? I don't feel like that's the case at all. I feel like back in 2007 when Harley-Davidson completely revamped their Sportster line and came out with the Nightster, and they came out with all the dark custom bikes, that was a huge step in the right direction to appealing to a lot of the younger demographics. I've sold a lot of Sportsters to the young guys when before they wouldn't even look at the Sportster. And so Harley-Davidson absolutely hit a grand slam when they completely changed the image and the aesthetics of the Sportster line. I think that was a huge home run, and that was happening back in 2007 when the economy was still booming, and Harley-Davidson was at probably the company's highest in the stock market. Their stocks were going crazy at the time. And so, I feel like for the longest time they've been doing things to appeal to that younger crowd. Now, there's always things that we can do better, but personally, my opinion, above and beyond coming out with new bikes, which is extremely important, and there's a lot of other things that I think that could be done. And I hate to use a spin-off of an overused political statement right now, but really we need to make motorcycling great again. And how do we do that? Well, I think this can be done in two ways. The first one is Harley-Davidson needs to dominate pop culture. And I think back to 1990 when Arnold Schwarzenegger rode a fat boy in Terminator 2. After that, Fat Boys absolutely just flew off the shelves. And I know right now Harley-Davidson is trying to partner with Marvel, which I think is a great idea. But if you look at the bikes and the movies that the bikes are in, no one even knows that a Harley-Davidson was in the movie. Like, I know Harley-Davidson had a bike in Captain America. Well, no one really knew that bike was a Harley, whereas there was no question in people's minds what bike Arnold Schwarzenegger was riding. In fact, people after the movie went out after the movie to find out what bike it was and what model it was, and to go see it on showroom floors. Another movie that recently came out that Harley-Davidson had product placement in was the Fast and the Furious movie, where they were riding, I think it was in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. They had a street in there. Well, I'm a Harley guy, and I could barely even tell it was a Harley that they were riding in there. That's not going to get people buying Harleys when you can't even tell that these vehicles are Harleys. And there's been several movies out there where other Marvel movies that there's been Harley-Davidsons in them, but they've been like a different variation, a weird color, something where you couldn't really tell it was a Harley. Harley had a bike in X-Men a while back as well. So I would say that you really need to make Harley-Davidson a huge part of pop culture. Get social influencers. A lot of people criticized Harley-Davidson when the 2018s rolled out, and they got social influencers a new bike that they unveiled when they announced the 2018s. And I thought it was an awesome idea and a great step in the right direction. But unfortunately, I've seen tons of videos and I've gotten a lot of comments on my YouTube channel about criticism with that entire launch and the campaign that they used behind that launch of the new Softails. And that is because they felt like the people that got the bikes didn't really deserve them, because they weren't real riders, and they were already rich enough to where they could afford their own bike. And one of the guys spray painted the motorcycles, and they felt like it was very disrespectful for the person to have gotten a new motorcycle, and he was so rich and wealthy to get this bike that he could just spray paint the bike, and it was almost like a slap in the face. Well, first off, Harley-Davidson unfortunately can't just hand out these bikes to any average Joe and still get the same type of publicity. Guys like Ludacris have millions of followers on social media, and so these bikes were an advertising expense. And so a lot of people criticize Harley for not giving these bikes to people that really needed them. Well, that wouldn't have benefited. They wouldn't have gotten the exposure by just giving them to any average Joe. And as I'm talking through this, I thought that was pretty obvious, but apparently not. But how I would kind of change things in the future, if it were up to me, is I would reach out to social influencers that rode anyways, that had a riding background, maybe guys like Carey Hart or Jeremy Twitch Steinberg, guys that I know right now are posting stuff about Harley, but make it an ongoing thing where it's not just one post. Give them a bike and hire them to be an influencer where they're posting constantly about their Harley. That and like I said, just get bikes into the hands of people that heavily influence the popular culture. One thing that Harley-Davidson announced recently at the 2018 dealer meeting as well is they were having product placement in video games. They have an Iron 883 in a popular racing game. I think this is a great step in the right direction. I think they should do more of it. You should get bikes in games like Grand Theft Auto. I mean, if you had 5 different Harleys in Grand Theft Auto, that would be phenomenal. And so, there's just a lot of ways that you can kind of get into pop culture more. And, we need another Terminator hit is really what we need. Another direction that I see Harley-Davidson going in a lot in the last 4 years is X Games. I think that's an awesome play personally. We're seeing these flat track racers, these hooligan races popping up, the ice track racing in the Winter X Games, And I think this is a huge win and a great positioning for Harley-Davidson. The one thing that I think they should do in conjunction with that is, they have these street motorcycles, the Street Rod and the Street 750. Well, they need to make these bikes look like these flat track racers from the factory. No one wants to buy a street motorcycle that you need to then pour $3,000-$4,000 into it to make it look like one of these X Game flat tracker bikes. They need to have a flat tracker / scrambler type street motorcycle. People see these bikes in pop culture on X Games and some key social influencers, guys like Rusty Butcher, and they don't have the wherewithal, the means, and the ability to transform these streets into these flat track scrambler dirt racers. So make it more, put some knobby tires on it, make it look like a scrambler type flat track motorcycle. That would be a really smart thing that needs to happen. So I've sat here and blabbed about what I feel like Harley-Davidson is doing good and where I feel like they can make some improvements, but really that's just the first part of it. The second part of it is, I think that everybody who is a rider, everybody who loves their motorcycle, and I hear people every single day talk about how their Harley-Davidson is one of the biggest joys of their life. We all need to be advocates out there. We all need to share the enjoyment. We need to instill that enjoyment and the love of motorcycling to everybody around us, because the more people that are in this community of motorcyclists, and I'm not talking about just exclusively Harley-Davidson, I think that's BS. We're all in this together. We're all a motorcycle community, no matter what you ride. But we all need to share the enjoyment, share the benefits of riding motorcycles. We need to reach out and help people learn how to ride. I've got a course up right now, and I'll put a link in the description on how to get started to learning how to ride a motorcycle, and share your enjoyment of it on social media. I'm a huge advocate of YouTube, and with cameras nowadays, and the amount of video and how easy it is nowadays, and sharing things on smartphones, it's very easy to share our enjoyment of motorcycling out there. And so I'll just end on that, guys. I love motorcycling, and hopefully we can all just spread how great motorcycling is. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye-bye.